Okay, so yes, Wow, go ahead and tell us about what this fellowship is and your presentation or your pitch, as it were.
Yes. Okay. So I'm submitting a fellowship proposal to the StrokeNet network. So StrokeNet is a network for clinical trials for stroke, which Duke and UNC have been recently they made a part, like a center for studies in North Carolina. We have Dr. Alex Lindbakken as the PI at Duke, which coordinates StrokeNet. And essentially, basically, they enroll stroke patients that could benefit for an intervention for them, and they keep track and conduct the trials. With their North Carolina Center, which is called, I think, Envision, I want to say. They have this U24 grant, which is to support the career development of researchers that want to do research about clinical trials overall. And usually this is intended to for clinicians, but they don't require to be necessarily in cardiology, in emergency medicine, in orthopedics, can be any specialty, as long as you are willing to go through a career test to do clinical trials. Me being a PhD was something that we, were a little bit uncertain if that would be applicable, but it is. And the story is that I tried to submit to this opportunity last year. I wasn't granted, but they sent me a very good feedback and said that I was highly competitive. That's some point again. Look at you. So let me look at the tiny announcement. Okay, I'm gonna share the screen. Okay. So this is as you're seeing there, a stroke research salary support grant.
Nice.
Yeah.
Those are rare.
Yes. So it's a 1-year grant for up to 50,000 salary support. And the due date is the end of this month. And they say that the results should come pretty fast, and they anticipate making a decision by April 1st. So that's also pretty good. The only major requirements is that the person that is awarded needs to dedicate at least 50% of their time to research. And me being a PhD, that's a PhD and a postdoc, it's a pretty much grant. So in terms of actually submitting everything, I'm pretty much clear. I'm working on refining the specific aims now that I have feedback. But I'm show you my project here real quick. I'm not gonna go through everything, but I think I even might have a presentation from last year. Maybe this is better than actually show. Let's see. Yeah, so this is just telling you again the same thing I already told you. And then the title of my proposal is Enhancing StrokeNet Research, Integrating Clinical Trial Data with Knowledge Graphs for Improved Patient Outcomes. And the idea here, the narrative is, there's a lot of data that is collected in these clinical trials, but oftentimes they're not standardized, they don't match, international standards. And it's really hard to actually connect them and try to make sense of all of this. So the way that I'm trying to tackle this is by using knowledge graphs. And I have an example here somewhere to show you what a knowledge graph is.
Love this figure.
So this is an example, but if you do Google search, this is what Google does. So a knowledge graph tries to create a relationship between entities. So you can see here we have a person, James, we have Lily, and we have another description up there, which is they are a person. So you can see that Lily is a person. At the same time, Jane is a person. Da Vinci, which Lily is interested in, is also a person. So the way that you build, instead of using a table to organize your data, you create these tuples, which are actually triples, I think it's triples. It's a relationship between one object, the other object, and the description of them. And there are many ways for you to organize this in terms of technical frameworks, etc. But the way that you do, and you try to add human knowledge, human description to data in a way that the machine can actually understand. So next time you need to search for Louvre, you're gonna pull up everything that is related to Louvre at the same time. You're gonna see that Louvre is in Paris. You're gonna see that, I don't know, Mona Lisa is there as well. So it's a way for you to organize data in a way that the machine can use human knowledge to extract more info. And from that structure, you can run predictive models, right? You can train new models. And I want to do this for the stroke the StrokeNet clinical trial data, in a way that we can eventually find new predictors of intervention success, and also maybe even help selecting the patients that are eligible faster. Oops, I might have the names here somewhere. They're actually phone, but okay. So my first aim here is to implement a knowledge graph to enhance integration of the clinical trial data, as I was telling you. The good thing is that I don't need the actual data to do it. I can just use their data dictionaries, because I'm gonna need what variables are collected, their definition, and I'm gonna be able to create the structure. So even in terms of ethical clearance, this should be okay, because I only have 1 year to get this thing. So this is one thing that I think it's, speaks in my favor. Make sure that this is feasible. Let's see what else can I tell you.
Because you're not talking about enrolling any new patients or anything like that, right?
That's
So-
the other argument, which is NIH and overall the research infrastructure really likes when you use data that is already collected and you don't spend more money to collect more data. And they even have, NIH overall has specific RFAs for, hey, I have this big data set here, just submit your grant and you can use it. So that's another thing.
Yeah, because if you're proposing to collect and analyze your own data in the course of a year as a fellowship thing, it's a tall order.
Yeah. Then what I aim to achieve with this is that I'm gonna increase the integrity and the interoperability of this trial data while improving the efficiency of data reuse overall. Every time, sorry. Every time I click, it goes back to the beginning. Okay, and then the aim 2, this is a tad bit different. This is the version from last year. But essentially, once I have this done, I want to pilot the actual knowledge graph with the data. So then I would need access to the data. That's why I have it as a second step. But the good thing is that we have publicly available stroke data sets made available by those data sharing agreements that NIH has been mandating. So if you go to the International Stroke Trial Database or the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, or NINDS, you can request access to all of those clinical trials that have to share their data. And by using that data, I want to basically feed the data into the knowledge graph and create a machine learning model to predict patient outcomes. And here would be essentially testing if this is effective and if this has promise to be deployed and find possible predictors of patient for intervention success. Let's see. In terms of conclusion, they're wrapping up. So I aim to advance the research in the StrokeNet network. And the interesting thing is that I reached out to their data centers. So this is a very big network. So they have a specific data managing centers. And they told me that this is something they are not doing yet. And does, has some novelty and possible benefit for them as well. And then basically, since this is a fellowship, I say that my plans include pursuing larger grants and a career that is in regarding and involving clinical trials as well, which I can justify, for instance, that in my K award, I am gonna do a pilot trial. So they can see how I'm dedicated to this, how my training part of the K award has a lot of clinical trials as well. And I can even tie something to our department. So the EM department has part of their mission that also is to become a hub for clinical trials and to become leaders for clinical trials. So in that way, I can kind of remove some of the possible flaws of not being an actual clinician, or like a clinical scientist, as they would anticipate. Because that was one of the criticisms I had last year, in which they say they were interested in a trialist, not a outcome researcher. Which I don't really understand the difference, but then now I can say, hey, I am going to study clinical trials. I am committed to this.
I'm a trialist.
Yeah, I'm gonna become one day.
Yeah.
And that's it in terms of the project. If anyone has any questions, please.
Cool.
Suggestions.
Or
He's putting this
suggestions,
in,
yes.
so he wants to be
Yes, I
really
have time.
competitive.
For once, I have time to make it.
Please. Thanks for doing that on the spot, Joao.
Yeah.
So the first thing that, awesome work, but the first thing that pops into my head is like Epic, so like our EMR, like a lot of our like predictive tools like eventually get integrated in. It's like you can click at high risk patients charts and like, then it'll, I don't know, for ours, it's like Billy Rubin levels, and you can like kind of see where people stand in terms of like risk or thresholds or guidance. Well, babies get strokes, but I'm saying, like, would this translate into something that could be like integrated into like a health system thing?
Yeah.
Or is this like something?
Yes, I believe that even Epic, if I'm not mistaken, uses one of those knowledge graphs, which is in the FHIR language. It's a FHIR, so like Federated Health something. So it uses some of that structure to link the different data sources, the different variables, etc. But for StrokeNet specifically, even the data that is collected and is available because of the EMR is also stored elsewhere because of the trial. So it's also shared with NI and NDS, with their own data centers. So my first focus is on their own repository in order to make their studies talk with each other, to integrate with one another. But I totally can see this being applicable in the future for Epic.
Questions or comments, suggestions?
We should talk about this in the PHS meeting too.
Yeah.
And I see Gray here. Gray, can we add that to the THS pool? I'd love to read it, especially because I know nothing about this. And so and some of the reviewers might be like me.
Oh,
So
for
how do we
sure,
make,
yeah.
how do we make that
Yeah.
translatable?
Yeah.
To say you're a trialist, I'm just gonna call you that now. We're gonna speak it.
Aspiring trialists.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point. So if folks have specific suggestions, or like how to make this understandable to someone who has no idea about data science or those complex methods. Yeah.
The submission itself is pretty simple, so I only have to submit the specific aims and then the letters of support, right, from the department.
You only have to, is it one page?
Yes.
Oh my God.
That's why it's harder though.
Yeah.
You have to sell it in like.
I mean, you have like a cover letter too, right?
Yeah.
So you can kind of frame it there, but geez, that's tough.
Yeah.
So that's the specific aims and the letter of support. So since I can't actually go into, describing my training, all of that, that's in a second step. I try to cover some of those in the cover letters. So
Yeah.
my advisors here are Alex Linkakim and João Cardo. And I try to have them set up, so Alex is a trialist, Alex is the leader here in the department for the, the chair of research. So in his, I try to convey, hey, Joao Victor is doing this with us, his training is, all about trials. We want him to integrate with our critical care team, all of that. And Joao, I try to cover that part of the science. And of course, they're gonna edit and see how it looks. But I even reached out to the person responsible for the RFA and asked if I could provide like a response letter from last year's feedback. And they say they're gonna try it, they're gonna treat everything as new. So,
Yeah, well, happy to read it.
sure, I will send. I think I spoke to our lab dean about having this in our THS call, maybe the 26th or the 19th. I'm not sure if we're gonna have the call this week or not,
Oh,
but I'm gonna send these specific names for you guys to see.
it's good support.
Yeah. I remember, when you first presented, like, your first draft, and, I'll just say, what you just showed us now is really, really clear, and I'm like, oh, now I get it. So, well done.
Well,
I'm super interested.
I'm good at explaining, not at writing, so.
It's hard to
Less,
convey that.
less good, I'm working on being more positive, less
But I
good
think
at
our
writing.
letters can help with that. When we understand, then we know what you're trying to say, and we can see if it translates into the words.
Yep. And don't be afraid to just write like you talk.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, NIH
Which is so
reviewers
much
are
harder.
real people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be as fluffy.
Mhm.
Mine were so fluffy at the beginning. Trying to, I don't know, use way too much
Mhm.
technicality stuff, but I would just suggest write it. Like
Okay.
you would say it.
Get the transcript.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
One other thing that I'm thinking, so, he talked about trying to be competitive where you are gonna be up against probably, mostly clinicians, and one thing that I think of, which I shared a source with you, but, there may be other better or more recent things that you could point to. It's a little bit anecdotal, which is why I'm trying to find some things that support it in hard evidence, but, this idea of like interdisciplinary science and NIH moving to where we're seeing more like multiple PI type of works. I think if there's some way to kind of, somebody can highlight that in one of their letters of support, like, though Joao's phenotype might not be the typical, clinical trials physician scientist that was envisioned at the inception of this fellowship, being that NIH and other funders recognize the strength of interdisciplinary teams, yada, 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 to try to say, that you have something unique to offer, that's gonna make you a part of a good team with fitted positions, in the future as you're developing your career. Something like that, I feel like could be useful. I'm sure there's something like that in one of the letters, but I think it's better not to ignore the kind of elephant in the room, which is that you're gonna be different than the other applicants.
Yeah.
And your proposal is probably gonna be pretty novel compared to the other applicants too, I would guess.
Good different though.
Yeah, no, yeah, in a way that can make you stand out, but you can't like ignore what they might view as a weakness.
Mhm. Yeah.
You gotta lean into it.
Yeah.
I had the chance to watch the presentation for two of the trainees, so they're currently enrolled. And the projects themselves are cool, but they are not, like an art grant, So
Sure,
I think
there's-
the idea that my project is pretty good, also it's in good standards. But then they were, I don't, physicians, physician scientists, in training.
Yeah.
And the other question, I was talking to you last week as well. I asked Alex is like, I just submitted my K award. Maybe they would think that I'm too far ahead, maybe they don't want to invest in me because of that. But actually, it's the opposite. They want to invest in someone that they know
Promise, yeah.
is committed. That just not gonna take the 1 year of research salary and then
Yes.
just zip away to a different thing.
And that's what they think with these opportunities, yes, they wanna invest in somebody that's gonna be around. Yeah, that's a tricky thing to elucidate a little more what the advice I was talking, the weighing Joao and I were doing the other week, which is, you know, when it comes to career development, you don't wanna be so developed that they
Yeah.
think, well, you don't need this. But on the other end, you know, you have to have potential, right? Like, you don't wanna be, starting from nothing, because there's gonna be too much competition. So it's kind of
Yeah.
you have to kind of find a nice middle ground where you're saying, I have so much promise based on these things I've accomplished, but I'm gonna do
Have a
even
bunch
more
more.
if I can leverage this
Mhm.
thing.
I think you can say that in your aims in bold. I'm a scientist embedded within a clinical department with the ultimate goal of becoming an independent researcher. So I'm committed. I think you just can boldly, I mean, I did in my K.
Yeah, I
just
mean,
would-
if it's career development, it makes sense to talk specifically about the career development instead of only the science, yeah.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't mention the K specifically. I would just say you.
No, but I
you're
mean,
committed to the
that
field.
you're, yeah, but that career point, instead of only talking about science, you're talking about yourself as an individual, yeah.
Just wrote that verbatim, so.
Good.
Folks are eager to see the full proposal, so
Well done.
thanks, Joao. Any other comments or questions? Suggestions? Feedback? All right, well, thanks again. Thanks, Joao. And especially for going on the fly, so none of us had to. Really great.
Put that in your application.
Yeah.